All right, folks. The Academy Awards, 96th Academy Awards, just wrapped up here about a minute or two ago, and so I don't really have a lot of downtime in between here. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into stuff we got right, stuff we got wrong, a couple trends and things, and of course, one huge lesson I think we learned this year. I think we're just gonna have to apply until we get it wrong, and I think it's a pretty easy one. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. But I think the biggest takeaway though of the night: Oppenheimer 7 wins out of its 13 nominations, so still a pretty good haul there. I had it down for 8 wins. There was just one category it fell short in Best Sound. Otherwise, Poor Things really did well coming off its BAFTA performance. It captured 4 Oscar wins, including one big one. Emma Stone, and we'll get to that, of course, as well. But otherwise, I think really aside from that, Zone of Interest took 2, and I think everything else was a one-off. They were one and done. Poor Things 4, Oppenheimer 7, Zone of Interest 2, and that was it. And somebody's gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm not gonna quite have time to pull it up here, but weren't those the only films that had multiple wins at BAFTA as well? So that kind of told us how important BAFTA was this year. BAFTA actually, when we think about it, nailed all 4 of the acting categories. They nailed director and picture. They nailed the screenplay categories. They nailed production design, costume design, and makeup. All went to Poor Things. They really, Zone of Interest as well for International Feature, they really previewed a lot of these wins here tonight. They did really a good crossover for wins there. A lot of like-minded thinking, I think, between the two sources there. So I really, Boy and the Heron, too, for animated feature, another one that I got wrong. I guess the first thing here, I'll just go through my notes first, chronologically through the show, and then we can, as we get to the different categories, we'll talk a little bit more about what I got right and what I got wrong. And we'll see if by the end you get the trend of what I thought was the biggest lesson to take over from this. Anyways, so I guess we'll start with the monologue, the opening monologue from Jimmy Kimmel. And I think this is because this is his 4th time hosting, if I'm not mistaken. This is stronger than his last couple. His first monologue I thought was his strongest work. Funny enough, that was the La La Land year, so kind of funny that we have Emma Stone win Best Actress both times. There were a couple kind of have your cake and eat it too moments where he's kind of pulling a little bit of a Ricky Gervais where he's making fun of the show and the industry, but then he's also getting sincere about certain things like the strike and all that, and acknowledging the crew that works behind the scenes at the Oscar show, which was a nice thing to do anyways. But it just, for lack of a better experience, I felt like you had to at least acknowledge that. Not that I would say it's the wrong thing to do when you're hosting a show like this, but just something I noticed at least. The room tone joke was pretty funny. That one I laughed at. That's a film callback thing for I think everyone there. So that was really great. So I thought the monologue, generally speaking, was good. A few jokes didn't land. And you're never gonna have like a totally perfect monologue, but I don't know. I personally think back to Billy Crystal's were always amazing. Steve Martin's were always amazing. Bob Hope, some of his, even if you weren't around at the time, definitely like I was not, the jokes just are so good. It's hard to follow up acts like that. But I think Kimmel, this time around, I think he did a better job. I think he honestly, because the last 2 he did before this, I can't remember a single joke. I just remember they weren't very funny. I just didn't get a bunch of, other than, little things. There were genuinely jokes that I chuckled at and remember. So that's a sign of, him doing a better job here, I think. So I really thought the monologue was off to a, pretty good start. It wasn't perfect, but again, I'll take it from what we've gotten from past monologues. This was pretty good. I remember when they did the trio of hosts here a couple of years ago. The monologue in particular, I thought there were a couple jokes that kind of landed. Outside of that, it was really forgettable. And I think as it went on, the 3 just couldn't, hold very much momentum. And I thought, generally speaking, Kimmel did a better job of that this year, just going through the rest of the show and popping in once in a while just to throw a little joke around, like Guillermo getting him the moment there to get a good joke into. I thought, yeah, that's like this works. So Kimmel, yeah, I would not absolutely compare the last 2 times when I'm like, get somebody else. This time I'm like, hey, if he wants to do it this way and get generally pretty good results, I would be down for it. So I thought that was really, really good start there. And this is generally speaking too about the show. This is one of the first Oscars I can think of in a while where it was actually fun to watch the whole show. And you're not just counting down, okay, how many categories do they have left? I did that at one point, but that was just really because I'm like, well, it seems to be going a little slow. Like the pace might have, I felt like the pace definitely, they were trying to pick it up there in the last hour or so, as happens with most live shows like that, a lot of these award shows, is you do feel like, yep, we get all, a couple things at the beginning that we're doing and, gradually, getting up to some bigger categories and stuff. But I felt like, yeah, once the pace picked up, yeah, then I didn't have that problem at all. But even then, it wasn't like a gigantic problem for me, so that's always good. This is another one. They started with supporting actress, so they did the same thing. They did this, I want to say roughly 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when they did the 5 actors, from the same category that were previous winners coming out to present the winner. And I thought when they really paired up the presenter with the nominee in each of the 4 categories, generally speaking, they did really well. Really appropriate for the ones who got their nominee. It was somebody they'd worked with before, in the case of like Sam Rockwell and Robert Downey Jr., or it was Rita Moreno and America Ferrera. You have the cultural likeness there, so that was fitting. It just generally felt like they put thought and energy into it. So that is always appreciated for people like me who are generally film fans, who's going to pick up on that when maybe the casual viewer might not pick up on it right away. So that I thought they did a really good job of putting some thought into that. But yeah, our first winner, of course, was Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers, and yeah, nothing, no surprise there at all. She pretty much swept the whole season, so it's a good win for The Holdovers, and a very emotional speech from her, and that was really, nice start to the evening there. Best Animated Short went to War is Over, and I got one of those early, predicted upsets from the season. I got held strong on that, got that correct, so I felt really good from the start there. I'm like, okay, here we go. This could be a good year. And then Animated Feature went to Boy in the Hair, and I'm like, shit! And that one was I was waffling on. I was like, it's definitely down to that or Spider-Man. And I was really, I really thought about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going with some international voters here and there, thinking about like a couple things, like costume design, production design, or a couple other categories down the line, like original screenplay and stuff. Thinking of the international vote, how that's going to help the winner in that category. And I dismissed it for that one, but it makes sense. And again, just another trope for the Oscars when it comes to animated feature. If you're not a Pixar sequel, even then you're not totally safe. Like Incredibles 2 has lost as well. If generally speaking, unless you're a Pixar sequel, in particular the Toy Story series, you're probably not going to win the Oscar. They like the original fare. So we'll move on. The screenplay categories were next. It was a little early to do these, I thought. But still, an original screenplay went to Anatomy of a Fall. And I kind of liked, because they always play music from the movie as the winner is going up the stage. That was good music while accepting, because it was the opening like little rock beat from the beginning of the movie. So that was appropriate. Because I'm like, where do I... Oh, yeah. It's like, I know that music. Adapted screenplay, American Fiction. That was, again, pretty consistent winner as we started going there through the season. So that one I picked up on, even though that one, had the possibility for an upset or two with a couple other films that could have won that category. But yep. And a nice speech from Cord Jefferson on that one. I really liked his statements there. Then we had David Alan Grier as the announcer. I think they pointed him out at this point. He was in person on camera a couple times and announcing. So it's, usually when they do announcers here at the Oscars, it's like just a professional announcer. It's somebody that, that's their career. And David Alan Grier obviously is more famous for being a comedian and an actor and everything. So I can get the sense some people might be a little annoyed by that. They're like, well, why not just bring in the, people who actually do this voiceover stuff and announcement stuff that's their career. That's their whole, gig is getting gigs like this. Their whole job is getting gigs like this and everything. But still, it was David Alan Grier. You couldn't be upset at him. He did a nice job. So I really didn't have much backtrack on that one. God, probably the biggest improvement I saw, and this is not just for the Oscars, this is just for award shows in general, presenters together that made sense. multiple times they made sense, and in different contexts they made sense. We had Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy, who are doing the Furiosa movie together. It comes out later this year. You've got Catherine O'Hara and Michael Keaton, who work together in Beetlejuice. Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, who've got a movie coming out. Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. We'll get to them a little later because they were really great. Reuniting from a previous film. America Ferrera and Kate McKinnon, who worked together on Barbie. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, who are working together on Wicked. It just makes sense. And they, since a lot of these people have worked together, actually all of them have, to a small extent or another. Maybe they don't, have a lot of scenes together in the same movie, yet, at least, that we've seen. It's, there's always going to be something of a chemistry, whether they have it for real or they don't. There's going to be something of a small chemistry there when you pair actors up like that when they work together. So I thought that was a really nice step. Really great they did this. They didn't just throw on just random two people. I think the only case I can think of, and even then I thought, I'm like, there had to be, it was Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer, and I think even then they probably have worked together. I just can't think of what it was they worked on together. It was probably something, and that was natural, for whatever reason, that felt like the only one that didn't feel very natural, but it was the thing where they were, trying to throw the message out of, hey, we need scripts and stuff, but I got what they were going for. It just didn't, I just didn't particularly care for the presentation there. Anyway, so yeah, that was a big plus, I thought, through the night, as they kept that theme up, and it was really working, and I'm like, that's the reason why you're going to remember some of these pairings, because they've worked together, and they, generally speaking, have really good chemistry together. So next up was makeup and hairstyling. That went to Poor Things. That was an upset that I got right, and a last-minute switch, so I was really proud of that one. And it was a hedge my bet kind of feel, because it felt like it should have been Maestro. Even like a couple minutes after I shut the video down last time, I'm like, I'm probably going to get that stupid motherfucking category wrong. It's going to be Maestro. I'm going to feel like an idiot. And then they said Poor Things. I'm like, oh, yes. For once, one of those last-minute changes works for me. That was good. Production design also to Poor Things. That one felt good because that was one I had started with Poor Things early on in the season, switched to Barbie, and then I switched back to Poor Things, and I wasn't sure 100% on it, but there you go. Then we get to one of the better bits of the night, the streaker bit. Of course, a nice throwback to the actual, was it actual or was it planned, bit back in the 70s. With John Cena. And it was funny that it was with the costume design category. See, again, this is where I'm thinking, hey, these producers, they know what's up, and they're putting a little more thought into it. So that I appreciated. And I thought, again, usually a bit like that is one that we would all just kind of, be tired of and stuff. But I thought with John Cena and Kimmel going back and forth, I actually liked it. Some people probably, I'm sure there's a couple people out that just hated that joke, and they're just like, oh, it's so dumb, it's pandering to previous Oscar moments and stuff, but it's like, you know what? I'm sure there's a couple people out there, too, that are like, they might see that on their Twitter. They're like, hey, John Cena's half naked at the Oscars or something, and they're like, wait a minute. Oh, that's like the streaker thing. Maybe I should switch on and see what else they're doing. See, you get moments like that I think are smart when they're thinking about the possibilities of what else goes with it. So then costume design also went to Poor Things. So I was glad about that. I'm like, so far, so good. We were getting on a good, after Boy in the Hair, and I was like, boy, we're on a good streak here of correct predictions, and it's going really well. Poor Things is overperforming, technically speaking, from where a lot of sites had it. Then they went to international feature. Then went to the Zone of Interest, which was very expected, one of the biggest locks of the night. When we got to the Barbenheimer duo, that's the Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, who are doing a movie coming out again over the summer here. That was cute. I laughed a lot at their back and forth. They're jabbing at each other. That was really good. Playing up that the whole thing, that was really great. That was genuinely one of my favorite moments of the night. One of my bigger laughs of the night was that. But I was half expecting, because it was just a nod to the stunt category. Or not even a stunt category, sorry, a nod just to stunts in general. And I was like, okay, weird. Two things are weird about that. Number one, it's weird that you do that without also saying, oh, by the way, the Academy, we're just doing a casting category. We're also doing a stunt category. I was like, by the end of this, I'm like, they're going to do an announcement live. Like, this is for real happening. But it never did. And the other thing too was, if I'm not mistaken, the movie they're doing is The Stunt Man or something like that, or The Fall Guy. Fall Guy. That's the name of the movie. They didn't mention the name of that movie. Like, they didn't advertise it. That was weird. That was really weird. Especially since I think it's a 20th Century Fox, or formerly Fox or whatever, and it's owned by Disney, who's also owns ABC, so it was weird they didn't want to advertise that, but whatever. So a couple weird things with that. Otherwise, that was it. Supporting actor Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer was shortly after that. Yep, that was a pretty, easy call. He's been, again, winning everything, and a good speech from him as well. I want to thank my parents and the Academy in that order. Was a good, funny line. That's one people are going to remember, so that was great. Okay, then we got to the one I've been wanting to get to, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito pairing up. And what's funny, they mentioned twins right at the top, but most of their riffing was about Batman, the fact they were both Batman villains, which of course happened after they were both in Twins. But I think after, because they did Junior together too, and Junior was after Batman Returns, but before Batman and Robin. They're talking about their comeuppances and stuff, and Arnold had maybe the quote of the night with Batman, that son of a bitch. That was hilarious. I laughed my ass off at that. And then what was even better, and I'll bet this, it looked like it was planned because it had to have been. Then Danny DeVito says, he says, there he is, and he points in the crowd, and Michael Keaton's there, and Michael Keaton, the face that he makes is like, it's one of his Batman faces. I mean, that almost made up for the disappointment of The Flash from earlier in the year. That almost made up for it. I was laughing so, that was the biggest laugh of the night for me. That was so good. I got a soft spot in my heart for those two Tim Burton Batman movies, so, that was like a reward. That was awesome. I truly was like that. I could watch that over and over again. That was so good. So thank you for putting that together. So again, the producers of this show need to get some more credit because that was really great. Then I got a category wrong with visual effects. It went to Godzilla -1. I had the creator, and it was another one of those toss-up categories. You felt like, okay, Godzilla has a chance here. It's not a traditional winner, though. It didn't do well at the Guild. It wasn't nominated at BAFTA. There were a lot of things pointing away from it and pointing toward the creator. But, yeah, it went with Godzilla -1. But it was cute to see and good to see the, two things on that one. To see the presenters come up with, I'm guessing it was either the toys or the actual models they had from the film. I didn't hear which one it was. But to see them bring them up to stage was really cool. And then to see them honor a late producer on the film or co-writer, whoever it was. I'm blanking right now on who they said he was, but he was part of the. I think they said producer. To see them, memorialize him there was also really, really nice. So I was like, yeah, you take a couple of risks. This was one I was like, the creator feels like the right winner. Normally that would be the one that wins, but Godzilla has a lot of popularity. It's got a lot of strength here. It could win, and yeah, I took the risk on that. Best film editing was next. I went to Oppenheimer again. No real disappointment there. No real upset chance there. So yeah, that was a good one there. It took me a while. I had to look it up because I didn't know what the red pins were. But that's a Gaza ceasefire thing. So it was kind of because it was Mahershala Ali and whoever he was talking about for supporting actor. They both had the pins when they were talking to each other and stuff. So. Had to look that one up. Otherwise, I was going to leave it open for somebody to explain it to me. But I'm like, let me go ahead and do that. Then we had the Kate McKinnon and America Ferrera one. And Spielberg was being a good sport there. The dinosaurs documentary line was funny. That was funny. Oh, you're not one of those too, are you? That was good. Kate McKinnon did a good job there. And they maybe went a little too far with the nudes thing, sending that to Spielberg or whatever. Jeff Goldblum isn't real. Maybe went on a little too long. I thought the joke was funny enough when they got to the Jurassic Park being a documentary. I thought that, you can, the dinosaurs, you're not one of those two. I thought that was a great cutoff spot, but then they went a little further than they maybe needed to. But still, it got a good laugh out of me with the documentary line there. And then another wrong category with documentary short. They went with Last Repair Shop, which I talked about, earlier in the week. It was definitely one that was up for, a possible win there, because I had the ABC's book banning, which was the popular vote there, but that didn't quite work out. Doc feature went to 20 Days in Maripol. And here, when we got the director, credited director of the doc there, some of the most poignant line of the nights were in that speech. And generally speaking, I mean, Emma's speech later was great, really great, on the moment kind of speech there. But yeah, I think his speech had some of the most memorable lines of the night. Like, I wish I'd never made this film. And then the whole thing at the end about images make memories and memories make history was just so poetically well done. That just really, that was really just such a nice moment in that. Yeah, so, and it, I don't know, I don't particularly get very excited about, like, doc feature or some of these other, documentary categories, because I'm not a huge documentarian viewer. Once in a while I'll check one out. If there's maybe a popular enough one on Netflix or something that crosses my view, then I'll check it out. But, man, that just really makes you say, man, some of the work these guys do is just incredible. And someone to, summarize it in such a great way. Generally speaking, I think you have to almost award that best speech of the night as far as, like, just the content of the speech. I thought that was amazing. Cinematography also then went to Oppenheimer shortly after that. And, again, pretty expected winner. Hoyte van Hoytema was, I think, overdue for an Oscar win. He was really overdue for a nomination when he got it for Dunkirk, but yeah. Live action short, Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. I switched away from this one at the end. I went with Red, White, and Blue, which felt like it had the potential to upset as well. But I once they were starting to announce the nominees and I heard more applause for Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, I'm like, God damn it, I'm going to get this one wrong. And sure enough, I did. And then we went with another wrong prediction in Best Sound, which was Zone of Interest actually won over Oppenheimer, which is this is really the one spot where Oppenheimer really could have gotten a win, and it did not. But again, we're going to get to one key lesson here, and this is one category where it definitely counts. Then we had original score go to Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson, which was a very, or Göransson, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Expected winner. Not much else to add to that. Original song we got right with What Was I Made For from Barbie. It was a real toss-up between that and I'm Just Ken. Obviously, as we've seen before, couple things here. The biggest thing, of course, is, and I mentioned this last time, and it's not, a secret thing or anything, but a lot of the times, a lot of people go back and they say the wrong song wins when you have multiple songs from the same film nominated. The Disney lineup that we had, some go back to, like, Mary Poppins even. It's like sometimes the ballads are more likable and stuff, and it's the more energetic songs, the more upbeat songs that suffer because of that and stuff. And I'm Just Ken, obviously, if you're going by the performance the day of and stuff, you'd say, oh, I'm Just Ken, that has to win, right? No, they go with Billie Eilish, who did a good job, definitely. But man, the production number they did on I'm Just Ken just blew the roof off the place, and rightfully so, because it's personally my favorite of the two as well. But yeah, and Ryan Gosling, again, being a really good sport by doing that. Then they went with the top 4 categories. Best Actor first with Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. Again, no surprise. Mathematically, he'd pretty much eliminated the chance of an upset for Paul Giamatti, even though for myself, I would have voted for Giamatti, but no problem at all with Cillian winning there. Best Director went to Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, one of the bigger locks of the night, so not much more to add to that. Then Emma Stone for Poor Things won Best Actress. Yeah. That was another one where I'm like, okay, I kind of, not long after the SAG win for Lily Gladstone, I'm like, okay, this feels like another turn that could happen where they go with the SAG winner. But, yep, they go with Emma Stone for Poor Things. And generally speaking, there's a couple of things that make sense about it. Number one, of course, being Poor Things. It's a film that the Academy was liking quite a bit. 3 wins in the tech categories. Arguably, it was really only favored in the end of the day, if you at least go by the Gold Derby odds. It was only favored in the production design category. Even by the end, like Lily Gladstone had taken over in Best Actress. Maestro still led in makeup and hairstyling, and Barbie still led in costume design. So it looked like if it misses production design, it's going to be it's going to be 0 for 11 for Poor Things. But it ended up being, getting that 4th win with Emma Stone. And the other thing, too, of course, when I thought about it was, we talked a lot about The Irishman going 0 for 10. We didn't talk about how the Academy was also, not uncomfortable going 0 for 10 for another Scorsese film a few years earlier, Gangs of New York. So outside of maybe, because I talked about it's not very common for these, bigger directors to go, multiple films without an Oscar win. Spielberg has probably done it once or twice. I got to think here, because somewhere in that 2000s stretch, he probably had one or two films that got blanked. Actually, when you think about it, Munich and then Warhorse, I think both got blanked. And am I missing one in between there? I don't think I am. And then Lincoln won a couple, and then Bridge of Spies won for supporting actor and stuff. West Side Story won for best supporting actress. Fabelmans did get blanked, but we haven't seen his next film yet, so that hasn't carried over quite yet. But I think that would mean, if I'm not mistaken here, this would be the first time we see a major director like that, Scorsese, go 0 for 10 3 times. 3 times. Oof. So I guess if you're Scorsese, would they love to nominate you? They just don't love to give you too many wins. Ooh, boy, okay. One other quick thing before we get to Best Picture was there was a last-minute joke there about the review that Jimmy Kimmel was, quoting a review or whatever. And for the first, 2/3 of that joke, I'm like, uh-oh, here comes the Matt Damon reference, because you got to have a Matt Damon reference, right? That went to a Trump reference, so I'm like, okay. So maybe Matt Damon wasn't there, and a lot of people thanked him in his speech if they were winning for Oppenheimer, so I was like, okay, well, no, but they missed out on a Matt Damon joke there. All right. And then Best Picture, Oppenheimer, again, there wasn't really too much disappointment there. I think that was one a lot of people had already pegged. So, 17 out of 23 was the final score, 74% correct predictions and stuff. I'll take that. That's not too bad. I felt like, again, a lot of these categories that I missed, none of them were true, out of nowhere upsets. Just going back to the ones like Boy and the Heron, we knew that was something of a toss-up in animated feature. Godzilla, we knew was something of a toss-up in visual effects. Last Repair Shop, was a possible toss-up. Live action short, even though I kind of, bought the story at the end there that it was going to be red, white, and blue. Wonderful Story Henry Sugarhead led for most of the race. Zone of Interest for Best Sound. It had been discussed. It won at BAFTA. It's one of the key parts of why that film was so successful at what it was doing and got so much critical praise. So it was arguably a toss-up. If not a toss-up, it was an explainable one for sure. And then Emma Stone for Best Actress. We knew there was suspense there. We knew Lily hadn't totally 100% locked it up. Missing out at the BAFTA nomination definitely, made that, definitely true. And then the win at Critics' Choice, we knew, okay, so Emma's got a little shot here for sure. And I guess at the end of the day, just the one thing, I started adding Poor Things, more wins onto that as the last little stretch went before we got to the final predictions there. So if I had been more confident, I think, in Poor Thing winning all those, because the makeup one I threw in, not as a Hail Mary, it wasn't quite that, whatever, but it was one of those things I'm like, I'm just going to hedge a bet here and say it wins. Number one, because I felt like Maestro just generally had been just repeatedly disappointing, ceremony after ceremony after ceremony, even at spots where it felt like, okay, maybe it is gaining a little more momentum. When it picked up a couple award nominations, we didn't predict it for necessarily at BAFTA, like directing, and I personally didn't have it in for screenplay there and stuff. I'm like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for this film, even though it has been disappointing so far in the season. So part of that was the reason there. If I'd been more confident in that and the costume design and production design categories, then I probably would have gone back to Emma Stone, but I didn't have that confidence there. I didn't think it was going to do that well. If anything, I thought I'm throwing in Poor Things into these three on the hopes that it wins at least one of these so I can get it right. That was really my thinking there. It wasn't really a too much of an anti-this, anti-that. It wasn't an anti-Barbie vote or anything in the design categories. And it wasn't necessarily an anti-Maestro vote in the makeup category. Not just because I wasn't, a huge fan of the film or anything, but I just felt like I wanted to hedge a bet, and that was the place to do it. So, anyways, if I had been, then maybe I would have gotten Emma Stone right, and I would have switched that one out, that one back, I should say, because I had Emma for a while here this season when I wasn't going with Annette Bening, and then I really switched to Lily not too long after the SAG win. So, yeah. But that being said, so a lot of these categories that I just mentioned for incorrect predictions, what's the big story here? What's the big overlapping theme? International voters. I mentioned in a couple of these categories, like Anatomy of a Fall, I'm like, international voters. With makeup and hairstyling, I'm like, international voters. With costume design production design, international voters. I didn't know they were going to consistently do that through the whole night, though. It's like, boom, all 4 of the BAFTA winners repeated. Best sound at BAFTA went to Zone of Interest. Boom, it repeated here. You could argue with visual effects, Godzilla is a more international film cultural thing. It helped, arguably, it could have helped it there. Literally every one of these cases, except for arguably documentary short and then maybe live action short, the rest of those categories were ones where the international vote helped, and they cleared the way for who was going to win. So I think that's definitely, as we've seen the last few years, as the international vote continues to grow in the Academy, and I'm sure it's going to continue to grow next year, and the people that really do the work, that look through the long, long, long list of the people who get invited to the Academy each year, as they see more and more international filmmakers on the screen and off the screen get added to that list, the more you have to say, okay, in cases like this where it's a little bit of a toss-up, where the category isn't totally decided, go ahead and if there's an influence that could be had from international voters, put that ahead and put that in as a deciding factor in the race. Just go ahead and do it. So, so that's the biggest lesson I got from tonight. Otherwise, I know some people argue, because it's been a couple cases where it's like, hey, the better performance is winning, like Best Actress this year, Best Actress the year that Nomadland won again with Frances McDormand and everything. Sometimes it's that narrative can collapse thing. I would still argue you got Troy Kotsur a couple of years ago. You got Brendan Fraser last year. You could argue, a lot of people argued Austin Butler had the better performance in Elvis. But there was a little bit of a narrative there with Brendan Fraser and the comeback. There was definitely early on a narrative with Ki Kwan, even though, again, a lot of people would have argued it was just the better performance too. There was a bit of a narrative there of a guy, getting a comeback and getting a second chance in Hollywood and getting a bigger role in something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And on and on and on. It's just, I can name examples too. So I won't necessarily say that that's a big lesson learned. It's something you can definitely, if it's, again, a bit of a toss-up, you can say, well, is there a clear, and again, this is, of course, going to be very subjective here, but it's like, is there a better performance option that you maybe can go with? And in those cases, maybe you'll be correct with going with the so-called better performance, the more higher class, more well-respected, critically praised performance. And even then this year you could argue, okay, well, what about the performance from Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall, or any one of the 5, really, because none of them were coming from films that like critics had totally blasted or anything. So, yeah. All right. I think really, again, the biggest takeaway here, I think, again, is just the international voters continuing to have more and more influence in certain categories, or maybe not certain categories, but in certain races where it's a little more mixed, a little more like, okay, maybe a toss-up or a little undecided. If they can sway it, if you can see where they can sway it, go ahead and go with it, and just, it's probably going to be correct. I think that was a lesson this year. All right, so now, of course, as we do every year, it's time to dive into early predictions for next year's Oscars. Let's see here. I'm also going to pull up the Sundance stuff from this year as well, just so we kind of see, what was hot, what was not there at Sundance. So we had In the Summers win a couple of awards there. I'm going to look here and see. Has that one been picked up yet? It's not on this one list I'm looking at. I don't know if it's been picked up yet, so we'll see if that one gets picked up. I'm not sure which one that is. I didn't really follow a ton from Sundance this year. There's a lot more going on with like sports and stuff, so I was more caught up in that. But let's see here. A few other things. Daughters got a couple things. Yeah, a few of these, again, I'm not sure if they've been picked up for distribution yet or not, but we said, Past Lives was obviously a big one from last year that came back and got a couple nominations this year, so we'll see if anything like that carries over. But again, we'll have to just kind of wait and see also like what shows up at Cannes, of course, because there's always a couple players from Cannes that stick around, so there you go. As for films like released this year already, are we looking at any possible Oscar nominations from films out this year? I scoped through January and nothing. February, not much. Yeah, I do remember because the Bob Marley movie, when that was being first advertised, there was kind of a question mark of whether or not they were going to put it out like technically for theatrical release, wide release in January, and they were going to sneak it in to select theaters in December and kind of go that way. But they held off on it, released it wide here on Valentine's Day, and the reviews weren't great for it. It's been doing pretty good at the box office, though, in comparison. And I really think Kingsley Ben-Adir playing Marley, I think, was probably the biggest bet for that film. And we'll see. Maybe if he lands a Golden Globe nomination next year, if they stick it in the comedy musical category, then maybe he can stick around. But yeah, otherwise, I really don't sense a lot of momentum outside of that category there. Let's see. Madam Web. They had a couple of jokes about Madam Web this year at the Oscars, too. So that's not going anywhere. Let's see. Anything else from February here that's even worth mentioning? I don't think so. Okay, yep, Dune Part 2. Oh, I talked about this last time. If you didn't stick around, I did see Dune Part 2 here late last week, or I guess Tuesday last week, so almost a whole week ago now. I didn't like it. I can't recommend it, believe it or not. I'm in the very small minority there. I know it's, one of the top-rated films on IMDb somehow, which pisses me off because it's like, I don't know what you people are drinking, but it's clearly not water. And it's not, I don't know. I personally, I hated the direction the story went. I get that that's, arguably more of a problem with the general story, not so much this film, but it's like, no, the film is telling the story though, right? If you don't like the story, switch it. If you don't like a couple things about it, you can adapt and you can do a couple things with it. That's why it's an adaptation. It's not a literal translation of the book to screen because, most of the time that's not going to work out very well. Let's see. Otherwise, performance-wise, I think, okay, well, Timothée Chalamet was pretty good in it. Again, I don't really love everything that his character did. Zendaya I thought was actually pretty good in it, and she's, given some good performances before as well. Rebecca Ferguson I liked a little bit more this time. Josh Brolin, he shows up kind of late into it, but I wish I'd seen a little more of him maybe. Austin Butler, they built up his character a lot, but they didn't end up doing that much with him. I was a little disappointed in that. Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken are barely in it, so if you're going to see the movie for them, you're going to be really disappointed. Not that I was, but it was just, there's barely in it. Batista got a little bit more to do this time, but yeah, that's, not an extraordinary performance or anything. Léa Seydoux is pretty much a cameo in it, so again, not much to say about her. Stellan Skarsgård, yeah, he was a fun, kind of interesting villain in the first one, and he gets a little less to do this time, but it's a natural progression of the story and stuff, and but he's still, the makeup is still very impressive with him and everything. Javier Bardem got a lot more to do this time. He was really more like the third, fourth, fifth most important character somewhere in that running. He got a lot more to do this time. And Charlotte Rampling, part of my problem had to do with her character faction as well. I just didn't get what their logic was in the story, and that's part of the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of the film. Let's see. Otherwise, there's a couple of films that came out just this weekend, actually, that maybe have a shot. Kung Fu Panda 4, it's DreamWorks. DreamWorks is no stranger to getting nominees in. It is a sequel, so it might have a harder time. As I recall, neither of the other two Kung Fu Panda movies got in. The first one did in 2008. One of the last years they had only 3 nominees in the category, but other than that, it hasn't really been a strong run for that series, but we'll name it just in case. It did pretty well at the box office this weekend here, so yeah. And then there's the A24 movie Love Lies Bleeding, which Kristen Stewart was behind, and she stars in it. I thought she also produced it, but maybe I misread that somewhere. And I believe this one was also at Sundance. So, reviews on it are pretty good at 90%. Average rating is 7.8 out of 10, so it's actually, it's pretty solid. We'll just see if it can pick up and gain some momentum through the year. But, that's one I would kind of think about a little bit, maybe getting some stuff. Let's see. Otherwise, I wouldn't expect way too much from the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire movie. I don't know. I didn't see the last Ghostbusters thing they did, so I'm not really too over the moon hyped about this one. Let's see, but I would still say something like maybe visual effects, possibly if they really wow in that movie, and there's not a lot of bigger spectacle films toward the end of the year to kind of fill out that category. And the same would go with like something like Godzilla X Kong. What the hell is it up with that? Why not just call it Godzilla v Kong 2 or something? The New Empire. Jesus criminy. Yeah, visual effects, maybe sound, and that's about it. And we did see the first Godzilla, or the first King Kong, Skull Island did get in for visual effects that year, so we'll see. Let's see, this April, not seeing a ton here. I'm personally not really on board with the Civil War movie. It looks, if a story like that, which could really build out and be like a kind of impressive story about politics today and how actually torn the country is over political issues and stuff, to only be an hour and 49-minute movie, to have only a $50 million budget, I don't know if this is, even with Alex Garland behind, who's done good work before, I'm not putting a lot of faith in this movie, and the trailers so far have not really impressed me all that much, so yeah, if it comes out, it gets really great reviews, then I might jump in and go see it. But other than that, I'm not really going to put a lot of expectation on that one. What else do we got? Oh, Luca Guadagnino's film, Challengers. I've started to see more advertising for this. It's coming out at the end of April. Zendaya again in this one. I don't know. It looks interesting. It looks like an interesting story. I don't know if it's necessarily like a haymaker, like a big Oscar player for MGM, but we'll see. If it leans, it looks like it's going to be more of a drama, but if it, again, could play maybe in the comedy categories at the Globes, then it could land a couple things there, and then we'll see if it carries on after that. Let's see, we've got The Fall Guy, which we talked about a little briefly there, coming out there in May. I would say, again, like, you're looking at visual effects in the sound category. That's going to be about it for that. We'll see if Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is still a really long, kind of stupid title to me. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's weird. I feel like I have to phrase it that way and stuff. Visual effects is definitely going to be in play. The last 3 films all got nominated, arguably could have won that category their respective years. Looks like an interesting story, kind of picking up after the events of the last film, after Caesar has gone and left the series now. I think we can spoil that. But man, that trilogy was awesome, especially, and I know War for the Planet of the Apes is not as rewatchable as something like Dawn, but War was so amazing, man. I just thought, it's a prison drama type film and stuff. Again, not a film you would go back and rewatch a ton, but I thought just how they did it and stuff was amazing. So kudos to Matt Reeves and everybody on that one. But this one, they got Wes Ball directing, who I don't think I've seen any of his films. It does feel like it's a little bit of a cheaper, watered-down version of the trilogy, but there's still room for this to still be a decent flick and possibly get a nomination for its effects. One that I was kind of very interested in until we started seeing trailers for it was If, the new film from John Krasinski, and it's got a big cast in it, most of which are going to be doing voiceover work, but man, I don't know if I'm going to be digging this one or not. Again, it looks like it will play mostly for like the comedy musical categories of the Globes, and I don't know if it's, with Krasinski, I felt like he did such a good job on the first 2 Quiet Place movies. I don't know. This one, I don't know if they're going to go for it. It just looks like it has the potential to be really, really dumb if it doesn't pan out. So maybe there'll be a lot of heart and a lot of soul in this one. It'll feel like a kind of that Pixar-esque, level of emotion in it. Maybe if it really pans out. So I'll name drop it, but I'm again not setting a lot of high expectation on that one. Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic. We'll see. The fact they got it coming out in May is not a huge sign of belief in the film. If they had pushed it back to something like September or October, then yes, I would say that's definitely one to look out for. But since it's coming out in May, I'm not super enthusiastic about that one, but who knows. Furiosa, the Mad Max saga, weird title on that one too. It's interesting to see George Miller return to this world again and to see Furiosa, a little bit more of her backstory and stuff. But that trailer kind of turned me off. It just looks a lot uglier than the last one. The last one was pretty to look at. John Seale's cinematography and stuff. I don't think he's doing the... No, it's Simon Dugan, or Duggan, is doing the cinematography here. It just looks like an uglier movie, and I don't know. I feel like... particularly Anya Taylor-Joy, I feel like she's really getting overplayed for some of these roles. It's like there's other talented young actresses out there, and she's good. Don't get me wrong; she's has a lot of talent, but it just feels like she's just getting repeatedly cast in role after role. It's like, oh, there's other actresses out there. Give somebody else a chance. It kind of feels a little overplayed at this point. And that's nothing against her or anything. And I'm sure she'll do fine in the film and everything. But that's another one I'm probably going to skip. Garfield movie. But by the way, for Furiosa, we'll see if I can get into like a production design, see if we can have a couple more nominations like the last one did. It just tore up all those tech categories last time. So we'll see if I can do some similar damage there. Garfield movie is going to be playing for animated feature and probably nothing else. But yeah, I'm not super enthusiastic about that one. What else we got coming out in June here? Inside Out 2. This one I'm actually on board on, and I really think it looks good. Yeah, this is one I'm looking forward to. I enjoyed the first one a lot. Won the Oscar for animated feature. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a case where we do see a Pixar sequel actually maybe repeat and actually win here. We'll keep an eye on it. We've got The Bike Riders finally coming out. That's slated for release in June as well. So I know a couple people talked about maybe Tom Hardy, maybe Austin Butler, Jodie Comer getting some attention in the acting categories. Jeff Nichols maybe getting a screenplay nod and stuff like that. So we'll see if that one can stick around this time. Obviously it got moved mostly because of the strike, but yeah, I think this one has a chance to stick around. Again, if they pushed it back to something like September, I think it really had a better chance at landing some more nominations, but coming out in June, that's a hard, it's kind of tough to stick around for that long. But we'll, if it's good, we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. Quiet Place Day 1, the trailer was all right for that one. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to, because Quiet Place Part 2 didn't land any nominations. Quiet Place 1 got, I think just, the sound category? I think that was it. Or one of the sound categories. Yeah, or maybe it got snubbed and everything. I can't even remember what the first one got. Let's see here. Quiet Place 2 and then Quiet Place. I remember it getting in for like PGA and stuff and getting nominations there, but sound editing, it was the only one it got nominated for. That's right. Let's see here. Otherwise, yeah, it got in for like score at the Globes and the SAG, of course. It got a win for Emily Blunt, which was really weird, but we'll see. This trailer didn't really wow me the way the first two got me more intrigued for their respective films. But with Quiet Place Part 2, I was already going to see it anyways because I like the first one so much. But this one didn't wow me as much, so I'm keeping expectations kind of middling for that one as well. This one will be interesting. Horizon, the American Saga, and there's two parts to this one. Kevin Costner coming back to directing here. It looks interesting, and it looks like the scope of the film and stuff is pretty wide and everything. It'll just be if the Academy goes for it or not. It'll be interesting, too, because just from the trailers, it does look like there's a couple, indigenous persons in the film, American Indians or whatever, that look, more favorable or look like they're kind of fighting with the good guys, whatever. But after that, it looks like the perspective is mostly going to be from the settlers, and the American Indians are going to look like the bad guys. I don't know if that's going to come off really well or not in the political climate we have today. Maybe that'll everybody will just like shoot it down for that. But we'll see. We'll see. It's a two-parter. I don't know how the Academy is going to deal with that one. Do they nominate like one category? Best cinematography, Chapter 1 will nominate, or if they just nominate the whole, the thing as a whole. We'll have to see. Speaking of another animated feature, Despicable Me 4, it's got a chance. The first one did get nominated. I believe the second one did too. That's one case where the sequel got nominated. What else do we got going here? Twisters, one of the worst ideas for a sequel I've ever heard in my mind. I hate the fact that they're doing a sequel to this. What the hell are you going to do with a sequel? The first one was terrible. Even if I grew up with it, I've rewatched it since, and it really doesn't hold up. The effects don't really hold up too well. They were good for the time, of course, but what the hell are you doing? I really, and the trailer looked pretty dumb, so I'm not enthusiastic about this at all. But I will still name drop it in case the effects get in. Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't know. Maybe one or two nominations possible. Again, you'd look at maybe visual effects, maybe a costume design actually for a superhero movie might work there. But I wouldn't call that a huge Oscar player for sure. Okay, we've got then Chapter 2 of Horizon American Saga comes out in August. I'm interested to see what Alien Romulus is about. Maybe not for an Oscar player, but just to see what they're doing with the story on that one. More chapters in that franchise, of course. Kraven the Hunter. Oh boy, if Madam Web went down as well as it did, I wonder how Kraven the Hunter is going to do. Probably not well. And I'm also not super enthusiastic about Beetlejuice. First of all, I don't love the title. I'm glad that they're at least not doing like the prototypical Beetlejuice 2, but it's like I felt like, and I don't know if you need to necessarily do like Beetlejuice subtitle The Dawn of something, or it's like I don't know if you need that long a title either, but I don't love this title, but I'm like, you know what? I don't know what else. I don't think there's an obvious answer here. It's kind of like the A Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's like it's such a long title and it feels so weird, but okay, I don't know. Anyways, but I don't know. It sounds like everybody behind the film is actually kind of enthused about it. You've got like Keaton says he's seen a cut of it that's actually pretty good. And he talked about how there was more practical sets and more stuff like that going on in this one, which I would definitely appreciate. Nice to see Catherine O'Hara is going to be back. I didn't. I think I saw her name beforehand in this, but yeah. Let's see, more visual effects possibilities with Transformers 1. They keep trying on the Transformers. I know the last one did a little bit better box office wise and stuff, and it's arguably it was a bit of a better film experience for some, but yeah. Let's see here. We've got maybe one called Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt teaming back up, and it's from John Watts, who just did the Spider-Man trilogy, and I think he's been kind of itching to do something else. I don't know. It's Apple's going to be behind this one. I'm not sure if it's going to be an Oscar player or not, but it's coming out at the end of September, so I would say keep it as a possibility at least. One that I would really look at and be like, okay, maybe would be Joker Folie à Deux, which is going to be the sequel to Joker. Lady Gaga is going to play Harley Quinn. That could be interesting. There's a few good names in the cast here. Like you got Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener, Steve Coogan and stuff. And Todd Phillips is coming back to co-write and direct. So I don't know. I know that first one was not one that I particularly loved. I still liked it, and I still thought it was a good movie, but it wasn't necessarily like I wouldn't have nominated it for Best Picture that year. And I don't know if I necessarily would have voted it as one of the best films of the year or anything, but yeah, it was fine. It was a fine movie and stuff. Okay, then we've got what else is even coming out here? There's not a lot on the slot here for late Christmas season. Gladiator 2 could be interesting. Ridley Scott coming back to that one, of course, but we know what happened with a lot of the characters in that one, so there's not a ton of characters you can bring back to it. But like Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal and Denzel Washington are going to be in this one. Maybe a cameo from a couple people in flashbacks or something, or a dream sequence, maybe. Yeah, so we'll kind of see about that one. Moana 2, more animated feature fare there for sure. I'd heard they were going to do a live-action Moana as well, but I guess that's going to be later on down the line for Disney. Wicked could be interesting. This is supposed to be a part 1, part 2 type thing. Very much like Dune. They're going to try to, hide the fact that it's a part 1, part 2 in the marketing. The second one is supposed to come out next year. So again, kind of similar to how they were pairing up to do Dune, but I don't think it quite worked out. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see like Jeff Goldblum as the wizard. That'll be interesting. I think he'll fit that role pretty well. John M. Chu's directing it. The first trailer that we got from like the Super Bowl and stuff, it was all right. and I'm sure it'll turn out good. I've seen Wicked a couple times, like the actual show and stuff. It's been more like at theaters around, like smaller theaters, not like Broadway. I haven't seen. I had a couple people see it on Broadway, friends from high school and stuff, and they really loved it on Broadway. But yeah. But it's still a good enough show and stuff, and I'm sure they'll have the musical numbers. They'll probably have another one or two new musical numbers to throw in there. So, yeah. Then in December, we really don't have a lot of stuff slated yet. We've got Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, which sounds like a clusterfuck of an idea. I don't know if they're actually adapting stuff from Tolkien's appendices or something. That, I don't know. They tried the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, or whatever series, which I didn't watch, but there wasn't a lot of positive feedback from everybody in the fan communities on those episodes and stuff. And they're, supposedly they're going to do season 2, but it's like, okay, there's not a lot of excitement for that. And with this one, it does feel like they're kind of forcing something here. Now, there could be a genuinely good story here. You got Miranda Otto coming back. You got Brian Cox playing like an ancestor of the Theoden and his line and stuff, King Theoden. And we'll see. I'm just not super enthusiastic about this. I think if Warner Brothers and New Line, everybody involved, if they were really enthusiastic about this, we would have heard more about it by now. We probably would have had a trailer. We would have had more, excitement building up. But so far, we don't. Not a great sign. Mufasa, the Lion King, that just feels like such an afterthought right now as well, because it's going to go back and tell the origin of Mufasa, and nobody, and I mean nobody, gives a fucking flying shit about that 2019 live-action remake. It was another animated movie, yeah, basically. Nobody gives a flying turd about that movie, so why you would go back and continue this, and why this wasn't just lost in the COVID shuffle after COVID, I don't know, but it feels like a waste of fucking money, and I am certainly not planning on seeing it unless, again, if the trailers start coming out and they actually look like they got a really, really, really good story, something that could really, really work, okay, then maybe I'll be more curious about it. But in the meantime, I couldn't give two shits about this. Even if it is Barry Jenkins directing it, even if, there's a couple potentially good storylines there, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. No. And the last one slated right now is Nosferatu, a remake of that, coming out on Christmas, with Robert Eggers coming back here, and he's got Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, Bill Skarsgård actually playing the Nosferatu character, Nicholas Hoult and Willem Dafoe in it, so, pretty talented cast, some of which he's worked with before. I'm interested in seeing that one. And I had heard, there's been stories that ever since The Witch came out, this has been kind of a passion project for him. There were stories back in, 2016, 2017 that he was going to actually do this as a silent movie, which I personally would love to see happen. That sounds cool. But as someone else, the late John Schnepp, back on the Movie Talk days, he pointed this out, and it's really funny. He said, yep, you can do it that way, and all 6 of the people in the theater will come up to you afterwards and say, good job. It's unfortunate. Nobody cares about silent movies anymore. So I would love to see that style taken. I would love to see that approach taken, and just to see how it turns out. Unfortunately for Eggers, I think, you had The Witch, which was a critical darling, and, was kind of a sneaky, successful film and everything. And then The Lighthouse came out, which a lot of people loved. I didn't quite get to that one, but, again, a lot of critical success. Not as big a box office hit. And then The Northman, where he actually got a huge budget, and it flopped. It just didn't even come close to making its money back, and wasn't, reviews were still pretty good on it, but I don't think they were excellent reviews. What did they end up being? 90% actually. Okay, I thought it took a little bit more of a dip than that, but no, 90%. Again, it just didn't have the huge following behind it. And this one, even if you're just looking at the logo they've come out with, which I'm not sure if it's an official logo or not, but it looks like it's in the print of the old silent movies titles and stuff, the title cards from most of the releases of it and stuff. Which the original is public domain, so you can probably go find it somewhere. But man, I'm much more interested in this than say something like The Lighthouse or The Northman, both of which were okay, I'm a little intrigued, maybe more so by The Lighthouse than Northman, but I do want to see. I do want to see more of what this is going to be about, and if they're going to go, more of the vampire route and maybe try to make vampires scary again, which could work. They've tried that a couple of times. The Salem's Lot remake was supposed to come out here not too long ago, and they kind of shelved that, and now it's going to be like an HBO Max release. So maybe that one didn't pan out too well. But, otherwise, I'm not seeing a lot. Like, you don't have, like, a Spielberg project that's being talked up a lot right now that's coming out. Not a bunch from, like, previous directors that have been nominated. And again, I think a lot of this just has to do with the strike and just filmmakers, finishing up projects, and getting them slated in time for release in 2024. So, yeah. Okay, anything else we want to talk about? Not really. It's been a fun season. It's one of the first times in a long time that I've gotten my favorite film of the year won Best Picture. Argo, that happened on. Parasite, that happened on. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, not recently. Well, last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think, topped my list as well. So, okay, maybe there's more examples than I can think of. But, it's, nice to see Oppenheimer get the awards it got. Christopher Nolan now has his Oscar, so the internet can shut up about that. It's, and again, for 74%, I'm glad with what I got right. Definitely some of those picks, like makeup and hairstyling, going to Poor Things instead of Maestro. Glad I got that call right. The War is Over. I was on that from after the nominations came out, because early on I would have thought, the Disney one, the 100th anniversary Disney one, that probably would have won it had it been nominated. But the fact they overlooked it at the nomination stage and they went with War is Over and a couple of the other ones that were nominated, I'm like, War is Over. I'm gonna pick that one just because of the title. So been calling that from the early days, even though Pig, the Letter to a Pig movie, was actually favored for most of it, and then by the end, everyone else switched over, so War is Over technically became the favorite on Gold Derby by the end, so I'm like, screw you, I was supposed to get that by myself. But no, it was a smart play, and I'm glad a lot of people got that one correct, so, yep. All right. So again, biggest lesson, international voters. They're going to continue to be as influential next year as they were this year, arguably even more so, and, I think that's all I got for this year. So we will shut it down for this year. We'll be back in September. I'll probably do a March Madness picks video for the 12 of you that are going to watch that. But that'll just be a fun way, just a fun little thing. We've got a little over a week, actually 1 week until the brackets come out, and then I might do it that Monday or Tuesday before the actual games start. Well, technically Monday, because Tuesday and Wednesday they have the first 4 games, but nobody really cares about those anymore, so... All right, that's all I got. So we will be back for sure next year on Oscar stuff. And that's about it. Batman, you son of a bitch. That was one of my favorites.